I mean, how do I describe it? It's
bold,
A light,
black,
unapologetically black.
Very funny, amusing,
caring,
You give great advice from a different perspective. Passionate,
free.
vulnerable,
a creative,
sexy.
My girl is lit as fuck.
Always ready to twerk a little something.
genuine, very genuine,
resilient.
like sixth sense, otherworldly. If you know, you know.
It's so vibrant, baby. Hello, everyone, and welcome to So Vibrant, a place where music, history, and culture collide. I am your cultural storyteller and award-winning host, Lady AC, and it feels so good to be back behind the mic. Yes, now, I have been gone for a month, but I am not oblivious to all that has transpired. I have to begin by first stating rest in peace, love, and all power to Assata Shakur, because it was announced back on September 26th that she passed away the day prior on the 25th in Cuba at the age of 78. If you don't know who Assata Shakur is, I urge you, I push you, I encourage you thoroughly to look up this woman's story, to read the book in her words and also her autobiography, for us to continue this fight, to continue to push through. And I even remember just the impact she personally had on me. My very first protest, the very first chant even, was her words that I'll never forget, which began with, "It is a duty to fight for our freedom." And I can't tell you how many times I have said that chant, I have yelled that chant, and just really became a mantra for me. A reminder, consistent reminder of why it's important for us to do our individual work and collective work. I am happy that she died free of the grasp of this patriarchal, racist, capitalistic, white supremacist society. But it's kind of bittersweet because she had to do it in exile, away from her family and her loved ones. So uplifting them, of course, in this time, praying them peace, but of course, rest in peace and love to Assata Shakur. The work is not done, especially when we look at also this mess, this craziness that we have watched, observed, unfortunately engaged in some cases. And that brings me to sum up my thoughts in one statement. I do not have time to argue, go back and forth with, debate, educate, have a conversation with people who do not recognize my humanity, who don't even see me as human. So from now on, from this point moving forward, honestly since September, but right now, right here, my time, my energy, my effort, my love, my work, my essence, everything along that lines is only going to go to me, the people who I love and who love me, and the communities and individuals who are truly fighting for liberation and uplifting humanity for a world where we can truly thrive in. Not just survive, but thrive in. And that's it. That's it. Nothing else got to be said about that. And in the energy of that, that's pretty much what I took the month of September to do, was really dive into what I stand for, who I am, what I am, honestly, what I'm becoming, and who I'm growing into. And the message I kept getting was, you have to live it. You have to commit to it. You have to own it, especially spiritually. Because I have accepted that I am a very spiritual person. I just really don't go into the details about, my beliefs or my faith or the practices for real like that. But in the energy of all of this, what better time or place really than to own it, to call a thing, to accept that and identify that, then on a platform I created out of that same energy. To truly be authentic, I do want to admit and own up to the fact that when it comes to my spirituality, my beliefs, my faith, I am hoodoo. In embracing this part of myself, of my ancestry, of this deeper connection with me, has been a very insightful journey that I'm excited to see where it grows, how it goes, because I already see how fulfilling it has been for my life. Honestly, changed my life in so many ways. And what better time to do this and have this revelation than in the month of October, because we're in a new month, because October is also known as Hoodoo Heritage Month. So shout out to all my Hoodoos celebrating and engaging in that. And shout out to Mama Rue, who coined that term, Hoodoo Heritage Month, back in 2019. And one of the practices that I actually do and engage with is ancestral veneration. And just to explain it, ancestral veneration is basically honoring, offering, and uplifting the names of the people who are no longer here, who brought you into this world. Basically, their actions, their choices, their guidance, the things that they lived through are the reasons that we are here, that really shape the power that we all have, or we're destined to have. For the month of October, each show, I will choose a specific ancestor of mine to uplift and highlight, from my music to the different topics that I'll talk about. So of course I'll tell you about them, I'll tell you their backstory, I'll tell you their connection to hoodoo and how it connects me to it, but most importantly, I will also share the top lessons that I learned from each of them. And the purpose of me sharing all of this is, whether you practice this spirituality or not, or connected to this, because it is a closed practice. It is only celebrated and practiced by Black people. Just want to clear that up. That I wanted to encourage anybody who's listening to me to understand the importance of learning our history, or your personal history, to know what you come from, where you come from, and to really inspire you to know the power that is hidden, that is literally gifted within the bloodlines that make you. So to kick off the very first week, I chose to highlight the eldest of my ancestors first. So, the elders go first. So today's episode and music is inspired by this amazing woman who honestly is the reason I exist. That's how elder she is in the bloodline. And her name is Sah GEE See. And I'll tell you all about her and what she taught me. So enjoy this song and I'll be right back.
Was a farmer with skin as dark as night. He picked a cotton. My granny was a teacher with European features. Skin was lighter, and they had worry for their portion. They had no money for the cross in the Bible. Devil comes like a thief when you're idle. Take the land, take the man and the title. Reparations. I ain't talking about no dollar. Reparations. Yeah, my people want their power. Reparations. When I'm gone, don't give me flowers. Reparations. When you know what's yours is ours. My people want no favors. Ain't asking for no handouts from my neighbors. Don't need no conversation, just proper compensation for our labors. Cause I got one hand on the cross in the Bible. Devil comes like a thief when you're idle. Took the land, took the man and the title. Reparations. Ain't talking about no dollar. Reparations. Yeah, my people want their power. Reparations. When I'm gone, don't give me flowers. Reparations. When you know what's yours is ours. Reparations. Oh, it's fair, it's fair, it's fair, it's fair. Oh, it's just fair, it's just fair, it's just fair, it's just fair. Oh, it's fair, it's fair, it's fair, it's fair. It's fair, it's fair, it's fair, it's fair.
And that was Kirby with Reparations. Because Mama Gici said, y'all owe her. This country owe her. So it came out swinging with that one. Now, while Kirby is an amazing artist and she's from Mississippi, the message still stands. Just about speaking from the history of the enslaved people and growing and living in this country, of how much this country took away from us. So just as equally, if not even more, they owe us. So as stated before the break, the ancestor I choose to highlight for today's episode is Sah GEE See, or as we affectionately call her, Mama GEE. Now, while we do call her Mama GEE, she really has a grandmother kind of energy with her, because she definitely is a great listener, very comforting, very loving, definitely makes space for you to be understood and heard and cared for. But she definitely got in your ass when she had to, or set you straight, or gave you room to learn on your own and fall on your face. But at the same time, she would come right behind that and kind of swoop in and kind of give you this comforting, like, hug and cuddle of just, hey, I'm here. So Segici's story is very unique in itself because, as I stated, she is the beginning of my bloodline, meaning she was actually kidnapped and trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade from West Africa and brought to the Carolinas, showing that direct connection from the motherland to here. When I started to examine it and look at it very deeper, it even became more interesting because Sah GEE See existed in a time that predates what we know the continent of Africa to look like now. Because when you look at Africa on the map, of course, we see it marked into the different countries. And actually, the way it looks on the map is due to what was known as the Berlin Conference. And in the name, the country of Berlin, And all these different other European countries came into the continent of Africa as a result of the slave trade and all the different trades that were going on and how they were pillaging, the continent for many different resources. They basically divided up into all these different regions and saying who owned what and all this stuff, but not even acknowledging the fact that there are people living and thriving there already. Looking at the map as it does now. So Gici's people were from what is considered today the Togo, Benin, Ghana area. So that's most likely where her people were. And so where she was kidnapped from. But in her village, amongst her people, so Gici's people had a very strong creative energy, and they were tasked and honestly known as the orators, the keepers of the knowledge, the keepers of history, the keepers of traditions and storytelling. They were really known as storytellers, especially her father. And as a result of that, he passed that down to her and was, tasking her to become the next great orator. And what is so powerful and special about having that kind of energy is she automatically commands a room. When Sah GEE See speaks, everybody listens. Like, I can remember, just kind of being in council with my ancestors and, we'd just be talking and fellowshipping and, just engaging and talking to one another. And the moment Sah GEE See has a thought, has something to say, utters a syllable, the entire room focuses their attention on her and it gets completely quiet. As everyone is listening and watching, because nobody wants to miss the wisdom or knowledge or just simply what she has to say, because everything she says is golden. Every piece of advice, knowledge, information has set all of us up to achieve and do better, or to even as low as just overall feeling better about ourselves. I know I definitely have found ways of applying the different things she would say, and if I forgot, I definitely would go back to it. And she, of course, had no problem with repeating herself in that sense. When she was kidnapped and survived the voyage to the Americas, she was very adamant on using the skill of the oral history and really stressed the importance of that, because that's how she was able to produce and keep that connection. Throughout my podcast, if you ever listen, I really do talk about how important the word of mouth is. Or even in conversations with people, when I talk about my podcast or I talk about the different things that I've done or the work that I'm doing when it comes to research, or for instance, when I did Macmillan Park and all that, I really stress the importance of how important it is to capture our stories. And that comes from her, because she put that importance in me of understanding that the lived experience is just as, if not equally important. Because there are times where a lot of people, especially in this age where we're seeing people deny actual research and ban books and ban history and try to deny the written word, or try to convince people that higher education or history or knowledge or all these very scientific research and time and effort that people have put into it, aren't worth anything. And while we know that it is, and that's a complete lie, but when people get rid of these things, for instance, with the banned books, what do you have left? You have the word of mouth, the oral, the history that keeps that alive, that keeps it relevant, that keeps it going and talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the more people engage with it, and the more people engage, and they're willing to talk about it and remember. And that's how you're able to gatekeep, yes, and to keep these traditions alive. And that is how she was able to sustain herself in such of a horrible condition for her. And as a result, she was actually part of the people that now we know as the Gullah Gici. So when it comes to hoodoo, depending on the region and where you're from, it may have a little uniqueness to that region, but ultimately it is all hoodoo. And so in particular with Segici from South Carolina, which was the bed of creation of what is known as the Low Country hoodoo, or Gullah Gici as we know it to be. In the recent years, Gullah Gici has really grown in popularity. Of course, if you're a millennial, your first introduction to Gullah Gici was through Gullah Island, and learning and seeing those Black people talking about the different cultural experiences and song and play and engagement. And honestly, just a cultural connection for us, especially as a Black child, seeing people that look like you and being so connected to, that ancestry and making the connection between us here and the motherland and all those different things. Due to the harshness and just basically trying to survive the conditions of slavery, so Gici did lose a lot. She lost her family and that connection to the land and the ways of her village being in this new strange country. So the Gullah Gici culture, being in the midst of that creation and a part of that emergency that was starting to happen around the southern coast, really gave her an opportunity to reclaim what she had lost and offered a sense of creativity to kind of connect with the people she was enslaved with and build a sense of community that ultimately helps shape and preserve a sense of self-worth, a sense of history, a sense of importance, a place where her gift of being an orator and storyteller was so valid and valued. And that is what carried her through and into the rest of her life. She has so many very unique things about her. And one of the biggest things is, of course, the way she speaks. The way Mama Gici talks is very, very strong Gullah. And what is funny is that even when I invoke her or, talk about using some of the things that she said, I could even go back to certain episodes where I was recording episodes and I was kind of, saying some of the wisdom that she gave me and all this stuff. And I could hear myself actually mimicking words in the voice of how she would say things. Like the way she speaks is definitely the Twi or the Yoruba language. But then yet, because we're in the country, you got the southern drawl that comes with it. So it's very interesting when she says certain words. How, she'll say a lot of dead and this and teen, but then she'll drawl with it. And to give you an idea of what she kind of sounds like when we engage with one another, I found this video of a Gullah Gici woman talking about just the culture and the language and different things. But I want y'all to hear it to give a kind of idea of what Sah GEE See, if she was still living today, would have sound like. Check this out.
A lot of people don't even know about the pig feet thing. I said, what? I said, that was good. But you see, we had those things and Maddo cook them things, because those are the things most of them throw away on the plantation. When it was butchering time, those things they didn't want. The old people, ancestors, the slaves, as you would call them, would preserve and take those things to cook with, the bone. And now, guess what? That's what everybody want to know now, how we cook with damn bone and make things so good, like the neck bone. Now they tell you now don't eat too much because you cholesterol and all them things like that, but Back then, we ain't getting up with no cholesterol. It was good eating. You see? Good eating.
And that was Miss Caroline from the collection of Wiki Tongues where they did an kind of like a documentary of going to different people of the culture and talking to them about different parts of them and stuff. But do you hear how specifically the different kind of way that she talks? And I know in the comments of the video, some people like, oh, she sound like she from the Caribbean, or they say that sound country, like a mixture of both. And that's really a good description of how she sounds. And honestly, that is how Sah GEE See sounds and how she talks. Which of course I love her for, and then I definitely get her and we connect on that. And it's funny because she tries to get me to have the accent, and child, I was like, honey, I'm too country. Too country. But another thing, which is very interesting in the video, she was talking about the different foods and stuff she ate. Another thing I love about Sah GEE See is the food. Oh my goodness, what that woman can do with some okra. And what I found myself very interested in doing is that I really have gotten into eating a lot of more okra lately. Because I used to eat, I'm from the country, so I love fried okra, right? But I found myself like really loving okra in everything. Like there was a point I went through a period where I would just buy okra and, I would eat it any kind of way. I would eat it in soups. I would eat it as a side. I would eat it in, like I used to make like this kind of ramen dish and I had to put the okra in it, or I would eat the okra boiled or fried or sauteed or anything like that, or especially in like gumbos and soups. And that was a direct influence of her, of really getting to know her, was understanding the importance of certain kind of cultural foods. Like I joke with people now, I said I'm pig feet eating black now. And all that's because of her, because of the way she talks about the culture and the richness of us taking things that were supposedly supposed to be like the scraps or the tail ends, and how they made things from these scraps into these delicacies that we all still enjoy and eat. Another unique thing about Sah GEE See is specifically when it comes to hoodoo, is her ability to be what is considered a root worker. She really knows how to use different elements and different natural elements to kind of create these different kind of bombs and healing salves to help her in her healing or help others. I remember one in particular is I tease her about her nails. So when I say her nails, she has what I call a permanent manicure, because if her long nails are blue. In the particular plantation that she worked in, they worked with indigo. And so for anybody, if you kind of look at like people who celebrate hoodoo now, especially in the low country, like you see like the indigo fingers or the indigo dyes where people would dye their hands in the memory of that. Well, on the plantation that she worked on, they were real big with indigo. The indigo dye, where they would dye different fabrics or different things. Of course, we know indigo dyeing for like the blue jeans that we wear now, comes from that kind of practice. And so what she would tell me is that the indigo dye was so heavy and so tainted that it would get into the skin. And through working with it for so long, it would actually dye, your fingers and stuff. And she remembers like she hated it because it was so bad for her skin and she just couldn't stand it. So what she did was she created this kind of Vaseline type healing balm that she would rub on her hands. And after she would do that, she would engage with the dye from there. And she noticed how every time she used it, it wouldn't stay on her skin. But as a side effect of using this grease that she created, it stained her nails. So her nails became a permanent paint blue. So that's why I call it her permanent manicure. But also kind of the uniqueness of that is how the haint blue color has become associated with Gullah Gici. Like, for instance, the bottle trees, or having the haint blue colored houses or doors. I know the haint blue kind of became back popular with the movie Sinners, as you saw Annie's house, the hoodoo lady. Her house was a haint blue to keep the spirits, the haints, the boo hags away. The bottle trees that we constantly see or recognize of the blue bottles, the ocean colored bottles, to trap the spirits that try to come where they're not wanted and all that. So it's very interesting that for her to have those nails. So as you see, like, through our conversation, I learned so much about her and about where she comes from. And she was very determined to not only survive her conditions, but to actually live afterwards. So she actually lived long enough to not only see her freedom, but to actually live as a free woman. So she lived for a very long time. I honestly think what she lived to be about in the hundreds, maybe close to 100, up there pretty well. Obviously, living that long, you learn a ting or two, as she would say. And there were many things I have learned from her, but I want to highlight just a couple things. And I actually kind of touched on this earlier in the episode. Of course, the major lesson I learned was the importance of oral history and oral tradition. That's why I go so hard about us being able to talk to our elders, to really document and record and remember the stories and the lessons that people tell us while they're still here, to really be able to repeat and understand and comprehend these different things, because when they leave, this information is supposed to stay with us so that we can continue to pass it on. But if that information is never given, if no one is there to represent and have that, then how does this continue to happen? How does this continue to grow? How do we continue to inspire? How do we continue to show that we exist and to show that we have range? For me, not to say that documentation isn't important, because I really do, appreciate the scholarly information and research and stories, but the oral history adds the context, adds the experience, adds the humanity to the work. So that way, it doesn't just become facts and numbers on a page. It actually stays living and breathing and something even more tangible and more valuable to understand. Because while she may not recall the people she came from or the village she came from, but she does remember the people, her friends who she would run and play with on the beach, her father, the stories he would tell, and the laughter and the guidance he shared with her. She would remember that, and she always treasured and kept that, and was able to share that with me and talk with me about that. I did back in season 3 the check-in, the one where I honored Michael Jamal Warner, and I talked about and the lessons we learned from his death, and just things like death teaches us or can teach us. To be truly honest, that episode was inspired by one of the greatest lessons I learned from her, and that lesson was death stops nothing but a heartbeat, which basically stressed the importance of living life for now and dealing with and facing everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, the experience head on, and dealing with it here. So when you move and it's time to grow and it's time to change, nothing is holding you back from achieving everything that is designed and meant for you. There was these conversation in the spirit world of people just kind of seeing death as a way to escape that pressure of living, the pressures that were being created of going through these many different stresses, that reminded her of a conversation that she had with her father where he was the one who passed that message down to her. Basically, he was telling her that, this will haunt you. This will follow you. You have all this space now to deal with it. I can understand why it's hard to deal with a lot of things, because we also, while we have our own different individual pressures and different things we experience and stuff, we still have to work. We still have to show up. If you are responsible for people, you still have to show up for them. If you have kids, you still have to be a parent to the kid. So there never is really any time, or that's what we tell ourselves. There really is any time to really deal or acknowledge, or sometimes we pour ourselves into these different things so we don't have to deal with the things that we're hurting, or that we're doing the work to really heal ourselves and be better. But if we never do that, and we think that by passing on that it gets easier, well, the pressure of life ain't there, but the issue you still have to deal with. But it's better to deal with it in a space where you still are creating life, where you still have a chance to experience so much more, and realize that it can get better, and that it does get better. Being honest and being very transparent, I'm also a survivor of suicide as well. And just to imagine that if I would have went through with it, how much of the greatness of the things that I have experienced up until this moment that I wouldn't have been able to, I couldn't even imagine. And the fact that there is still so much more that is out there waiting on me to discover, waiting on me to obtain and experience, how much of that I would have cut short if I allowed those temporary situations, emotions, or even projections of other people. Because a lot of that I was carrying and dealing with and depressed about wasn't even my stuff. It was me internalizing things and adding my own pressures and stuff. It's ultimately the message that she gives, that even through the hardest, roughest times, surviving slavery, stripping away of her identity that she knew up to that point, but being able to survive it and create and come into a beautiful culture to still thrive in and with her gift of wisdom that she made with the freedom that she gained.
And just about the breaks in highs and falls, tell me what sets you free, oh yeah. Yeah, show what it means to be a part of something, trusting, knowing we can do it our way, oh my way. 'Cause when it comes to being bothered, yeah, I'm away my skin and changing nothing, yeah, for nothing, yeah. About your strength, yeah. Took me some time to see it, but I found it. 'Cause this is what we're made of. Parade my pride down, stand up. Hey, and leave some conversations about us. Yeah, I'm away my skin, changing nothing.
And that was Amber Simone with Black No Sugar. Powerful, straight to the point, no cut, no chaser. That is all Miss Segici right there, Mama Gici right there. But what is so beautiful about that song and impactful that she loves about it is the freeness of it and the empowerment about owning just who you are. And that took her back to where she was a child living near the coast and just being free and in her energy. And she says she sees that energy in me when I would play that song and how I would just connect to it and dance. And it really brought something in her, that spirit back to her. So that's why I had to play it for today's episode. So that was for you, ma'am. But as I was stating, with the lives that she was able to birth, they may have not had everything, but they had what they needed. And what they needed and what they had was theirs. And for her, what is more than having something that is yours, that you can keep, that you can hold, that you can touch, that you can value and add value to pass down to others. So with that being said, Ashe to the ancestors, Sah GEE See. Thank you for your life. Thank you for your lessons. Thank you for your choices. And thank you for guiding me to be here and giving me that lesson. And hopefully that lesson has blessed you as well. So with that being said, y'all, of course, if you want to connect with me, learn more, have any questions, anything along that lines, I am on all social medias at facebook.com Queen Lady AC. On Instagram and Threads, it is _ I am Lady AC. On Substack, it's Lady AC. And on Twitter and X, it is capital I am Lady AC, y'all. So until next week, y'all, happy Hoodoo Heritage Month. And I'll be back with a brand new ancestor, brand new music, and brand new message. So until then, see you next week.